Okay, this will be a run from Arcata, runway 32 and an F4 Phantom. The F4 and the F-18 you see taxiing onto the runway are drone aircraft on PilotEdge. We'll be following them on VR-1250. These depart every 15 minutes out of here. Not long after the elevator pumps 3 times on the Phantom, that's when he adds power and goes. So it's a burner climb, runway heading, and then intercept Victor a VR-1250 along the coast. Alright, Phantom's going to be rolling shortly. Brake release. Comes the power. There's the burner. Go. And we're off. My system can run at 1440p to drive the sim, but I can't encode at that time. So I've backed it down to 1080p. And it seems to be recording smoothly with that. Getting 80 frames, and it's pretty consistent. I was getting lots and lots of micro stutters when I was flying it before at 1440p with the video recording going at the same time. But this is looking pretty good. Alright, let's drop in, have some fun. It's very mountainous at the beginning, and then the later part is actually my favorite part, where it goes into more of a desert area. That's going to be a tough pull. Hang on. There we go. This is actually pretty hard to talk and fly like this. I can do one or the other, but not both, or I can do both badly. Oh, in any case, the second part of the route is my favorite here. The textures and the scenery are even more incredible than the part we're going through right now, if you can imagine. So some things to look out for here on the technical side: the fluidity of the rolling and movement of the plane in front of us. That position data is actually only coming in at 5 Hertz, but it is the plugin is interpolating between the frames at whatever frame rate the sim is running at the time. So you see, even though we're only getting position data for that F4 in front of us 5 times a second, it's able to move in the sim in a very fluid fashion. For the most part, we still have some imperfections on the back and forth movement, and we are working on that. Made some pretty big improvements on that lately, actually. And also keep an eye out for the shadows on the ground. That's a that really adds to the immersion level and allows you to gauge how high the plane is off the ground in front of you when you can see the shadow that's casting. Oh, I did say the Hornet would be back, didn't I? Again, these leave every 15 minutes or so, kind of like buses out of Arcata. So if you're a PilotEdge user, you can jump on at Arcata, park there on runway 32, or at the ramp, whichever one you like. Really the tough part of this is flying it somewhat fluidly and also trying to judge your rate of closure with the other aircraft. Takes some time to learn how to do that. You can see the shadow from the Hornet again. We're neck and neck right now. I think he's on our right, so I'm just staying on the left of the Phantom. Oops. Oops. We broke Mark 1 there. I wasn't watching my speed when I did that burner portion. And you get Mark tuck effect in X-plane when you hit Mark 1. So the nose pitched down. I was just really having to pull a lot of elevator to get it back up. Okay, so now we're transitioning into the flatter area. As promised, see the shadow of the Hornet right down there? Should be just on our right as we get through this turn. There he is. In terms of flight control hardware, I'm using a Thrustmaster T16000M. I do not have the HOTAS. No head test, just the stick itself and CH rudder pedals from about 15 years ago. Obviously don't use the rudder pedals a whole lot during flight for this type of flying. If you do end up joining these aircraft on VR-1250, you can see what speeds I'm flying, generally in the 500 to 550 knot range. The actual published speed limit on military training routes is 480 knots in the real world. They also tend to not fly quite so low, based on the videos I've seen. Probably for safety reasons, they don't generally spend lots of time at 50 AGL, or some of the straight line segments we do get really, really low. That was me just to practice as much as I can, getting used to the stick here. It's a bit more of a challenge to do that. That nearly ended poorly. Well, that is a fun little stretch right there. In terms of these aircraft that we're following, these were hand flown. about a week ago or so, individually. So the lead was recorded, and then the lead was played back, and number 2 was recorded while following the lead playback. So it's just a matter of us starting the recording of number 2 at the same time we start the playback of number 1, so that they fly together essentially when you play them back together. So these 2 are drone aircraft. They're not being flown by a real person right now, but they were originally flown by a real person to begin with. So they're not computer-controlled flight paths. That's why you'll see they're relatively dynamic. There's a lot of imperfections in the flying. But visually it's a lot more compelling having a flight track that was flown by a real person as opposed to a computer-controlled flight path that's perfectly smooth and boring. Doing Mach 0.96, we should gain on them pretty good. This is a really fun sequence in this area if I don't mess it up. I end up doing a 360-degree turn kind of through this mountain. It's actually really fun. Can't remember why I did it, but I had a reason at the time. Oh, that's right. I was trying to reposition slightly, ended up missing the mark, and figured I'd just turn around all the way. It ends up being really fun to fly. This section is really neat. It's just one long drop through this mountain, or through this little valley. Where did he come from? I'll have to slow down, give him some room then. I haven't actually done the 360 yet. That must be coming up after then. Okay. That's my scenery load happening. Oof. It was much more painful. Wow, the scenery load is really killing my system when the when it's also recording, I guess. i.e. the video recording. Or we're having to boogie through here to catch them. Mach 0.995. Finding it's really tough to do that maneuvering, those turns down low, because you have a tendency to either push or pull ever so slightly as you add the aileron. And so you can have a change in height very quickly if you're not careful. That is one of the things I like about flying low. You can see imperfections in your flying that you can't see when you're up at higher altitudes, because you just can't perceive that change in altitude of 5 feet or 10 feet. Anyone who's driving on that road's in for quite the treat. I think this is the mountain where the 360 happens. It's funny, my own shadow is slightly corrupted. There's no shadow from the airframe, just from the weapons I'm carrying. I think this is the 360. Adding power. Gotta climb over this ridge right here. Oh dear. Wasn't quite smooth, was it? So much fun. There is nothing better than crossing a ridge with minimal separation. Good times. $600. Wow, they're really cooking through this segment. Doing 580 and just barely keeping up with them. Also get to experience the change in stick pressure required to keep it on altitude, because at this higher speed have to add some forward pressure. I'm not doing a good job of it, which is why you can see the nose keep coming back up, then I'm pushing it back down. End up with a little bit of porpoising. Wasn't a very smooth pull at the bottom. I realized my rate of closure with the ground was not working with the amount I was pulling. I was going to hit the ground, but my correction was just a little too much, so ended up not being a very smooth pull. But you probably saw that. Again, that is why I I'm well aware that they don't normally fly these routes at these speeds, to the best of my knowledge, nor do they fly them this low. But I find it very helpful for my own proficiency and precision to attempt to do it, because I see the mistakes in my flying that I would not be able to see if I was doing it at, say, even 400 or 500 feet, where they would normally do it. Wow, we're just neck and neck with that other Phantom based on the shadow that's there. I'll back up and keep to the right here. There he goes, I think. There he is, yep. Again, the shadows are invaluable. Looking at the map. Looking at the ground, we're going to be hanging a right, and then the route ends. So these guys will pull up. Lead actually does a quick wing waggle just to indicate that he's about to do the pull up. I think these guys go under the power lines. I think our tail would have actually caught that power line, to be honest, right there. Let's see, so lead does wing waggle. Then there's a pull, I believe, to vertical, if not just shy of vertical, to a very, very quick climb to 17.5. Doesn't take long at all. And then level off, and then they head on back to Fallon. I will probably not fly the recovery at Fallon. It's far less interesting than this. Ooh, we are very close to this guy. Okay, that's going to work out. Oh, well, this is a good spot. Wing waggle. And here we go. Here's the pull. There's a small hesitation on the pull. I can't remember why I did that. That's right. Hadn't worked out exactly what angle I wanted to climb out at. So I hesitated on the pull. And then I realized, no, let's actually go for a really, really aggressive climb. So that's 75 degrees, burner on, rolling. If you watch that altitude, there's 17.5 right there. That has to be one of the quickest climbs you'll ever see to 17,000 feet. So much fun. All right, give you a quick view of the scenery now that we're up high. This is the area around Carson Sink. I don't know, about 50 northeast of Naval Air Station Fallon. If you want to practice your low-level flying, formation flying, have some fun, whatever floats your boat, highly recommend it. With X-Plane 11, got to have that orthographic scenery. The generic textures are just not going to look like this. So I use Ortho for XP. And at these altitudes, it's really indistinguishable from the real world, I suspect. So I was very reluctant to actually use orthographic scenery for the longest time, because I didn't like that you lost a lot of the 3D objects and roads. But there's now technology for X-Plane that allows you to have the 3D objects overlaid on top of the scenery. So that's why we had real roads and bridges and trees and power lines, even though we had the orthographic scenery. But look at those lakes down there. Been simming for a long time and have not really been able to see scenery like that before. So that's a lot of fun. Alright, that's going to do it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll give it a try yourself.